Hey, it's been a while. Like, a while. So yeah, here's the thing. I'm going to take a break from my small Metroidvania game, Polar Master, and what better way to rest but to make another game. So I decided to make a card game in 1 week. Hello, this is me from the future. It took a couple of months, yeah. So I guess for our first order of business, how about deciding how the card game will play out? First thing that I had in mind is that it will be some kind of an auto battler, and also it has to be a game that I won't have to think that much. For the exact mechanics, I'll think about that later. So now let's open up Godot and I have no clue on what to do. So maybe I'll start with some few mockups. So I have this draft and another draft, which is the actual draft. Then I had to mock up the card layout, which was actually a very long process. I looked up a bunch of pixel art card references, then I tried to conjure up my own version. So with those initial mockups done, it's time to proceed to the harder part, the actual game. So now let's open up Godot. I have no clue on what to do. I don't know how to actually approach this project, so for the meantime, I did some background art to feel productive. Okay, now for real, let's open up Godot. And to get the ball rolling, for this game, I really prevented myself from looking at YouTube guides on how to make the specific game I wanted to make, so I have to start with some baby steps. Let's start with a simple draw mechanic. So I had to mimic a draw mechanic, so I tried to move some cards from one position to another. Alright, so far so good. Meanwhile, I made some card art so that I can have unique cards to simulate varying cards on the deck. Yeah, looks good. So all of these mechanics revolve around Godot's texture button node, and I basically use the built-in click detection of the nodes to transfer cards as a child from one control node parent to another. At this point, I went ahead and improving the layout once more, and actually deciding on how the overall game will play out. So what I thought of was that players will each place 5 cards on the battlefield, with the opposite players' field hidden from their side. Players will decide on how to produce the strongest board, and once they're ready, they have to simply click the ready button and the battle will proceed by itself. Each card will battle the opposite card. If its attack is higher than the enemy's health, the enemy's card will be destroyed, and vice versa. So I went ahead and started developing the gameplay in Godot. So stuff like drawing the cards and placing them on the battlefield. I also made a temporary AI that would auto-draw and auto-fill its own board. So then I proceeded on working on simulating the combat. For this initial draft, I simply removed the destroyed cards from the field parent control node. So right now, you don't actually get to see who was battling with whom. And I know most of the time the code will need to come first, but I wanted to know if I can pull off a decent card combat animation. So off the sprite I go. I made some speed lines, used them in colliding the cards, then I improved the collision animation itself and put it all together. So after combat is finished, you see what card survives and will go back to your deck. So with this game, you can see your deck at will, but of course you still randomly draw from it. So I had to work on the deck view UI and made a separate button now for drawing cards. And as you can see, the deck cards are now properly being drawn and remembered, because before it was all just randomly drawing from the card pool. It was at this half point or so I thought. I started slowing down progress because of... But hey, for those still at this point, thank you for still watching. If you're interested, I'm going to link the source code for this, and also my code is trash, so if you want to see the trash, go ahead, I ain't stopping you. So going back to development, I made some progress in some minor details like disabling the draw button when you cannot draw anymore. For the rules of drawing, I will have to think of that later. You can also see your deck count when you hover the deck UI, so that's neat. Next up are rounds. Turns are extremely important in any card game, or any turn-based game really, because you know, it's in the name. So I had to make sure that the code behind it was working properly. The rounds are not really complex. I don't have phases like Yu-Gi-Oh! And attack token rounds like Legends of Frontera. Rounds are just meant to encapsulate one battle, and the number goes up. Simple enough. Okay, then I decided on the draw mechanics. At this point, really, I'm just making stuff up, and I have actually no clue if the mechanics will overall contribute into a fun game. At this point, I was just happy if I could finish the code part. So the drawing, just like any other card game, is a powerful resource. In this game, you can stockpile your draws. You start with a certain number of draws. It's up to you if you want to use all of them or just use 5. Leftover draws will carry over to the next round, but your hand is wiped every round. For now, I think that's an interesting card draw mechanic. Then I worked on the abilities, so the abilities are now handled at the start of the round, and I added some visual effect if a card is activating its effects for visibility. I forgot to pay attention to one important thing, the enemy AI. Well, at this point, it's only drawing randomly from the card list pool, but now it's randomly creating a deck and randomly drawing. I know, pretty sick, right? I worked on making the player win or lose because I think that's pretty important, I think. So yeah, the main menu. Here, tada! And of course, you can't have a card game without deck building. Most card game players know that this is the menu that we spent the least amount of time in because we are filthy net deckers. By the way, I'm skipping on the specifics of the implementation because that might be too boring. But if you want to see a tutorial, you can leave a like or a comment. If you don't want to see it, you can also leave a like and a comment. So yeah, made the deck thingy, made sure that the deck is safe and properly reflected on the game. Now that I finished the deck building, it's time to finish the cards. So the cards. Well, I've been talking about the card game but not really about the actual cards. I went for a more realistic theme. Like, you know, gamers, slabs of chicken, and Giga Chads. First, we have this set of cards. They are pretty generic, just buffs and whatnot. And we have the gamer set. So the PC, the buffs the gamers, because you know, gaming is not particularly the healthiest hobby. The basement is where the gamers live. It gives buffs, you know, it's some debuffs. The main card of this set is the mom. The mom is a strong card, but it unplugs your PC. Next, we have the Giga Chad set. So yeah, we have Giga Chads and slabs of chicken. Yep. So I went ahead and making the card interactions. This is where I spent the most time bug fixing, and for sure there is still a lot more. And the game is completely not balanced, and just kidding, I actually made my friend play test and he found a lot of bugs, like a lot, and a lot of balancing issues. So the problem is that the dude archetype sucks. The gym card, which is basically a support card for the Chad deck, steamrolls most of the cards, and the basement card is expensive for nothing. So I made a few adjustments. So I buffed the dude, nerfed the gym card, and I attached a healing mechanic to the basement card. I made some deck setups for each configured difficulty for the enemy AI. Well, it still plays completely random, but you know, it's still something. So I then slapped some sound effects that I made and some AI generated music. And voila, you now have a working game. You can play it on the itch.io link down below, but yeah, overall I think I had fun making the game. It was also interesting to be able to make a game without overly relying too much on the internet for the backbone on how to make it. Sure, it might not be the most optimal way, but I managed to make it work nevertheless. So yeah, I hope you could try out my game for yourself. Sorry if it's a pile of bug-riddled, unbalanced mess, and I'll see you on the next one.